Guys, for today's video we're going to be talking about envy and jealousy and looking at other people, comparison, right? The thief of all joy. So just get into us. You know, the Bible talks a lot about this, and Jesus says that material things don't really matter. If you're super rich on earth or you're super poor, it doesn't mean Jesus loves you or likes you or whatever any more or any less. Jesus cares about each and every one of you, or every person, right? With whether, you know, you're famous, rich, whether your parents do really well, whether you have a good job, whatever. Jesus doesn't care. But in reality, we all kind of struggle with those issues. And so, you know, I'm singing from the top of a golden tower, right? So for me, I have a great job. I have, you know, a great girlfriend. It seems for me, you know, all the needs in my life, all the real wants that I've ever really wanted, I pretty much have. And I don't really have to, you know, fight for things. I'm obviously not like a multi-millionaire, billionaire or something, but I have a good job, I have a good education, I have a good family, you know, my car works, I have like everything. I have a cool motorcycle, I have hobbies, you know, I have all the stuff that I kind of ever wanted. And not to say that it wouldn't be cool to have, you know, I rent a town, or I rent a place, you know, right now. I haven't bought my own house yet because I've been waiting, because in case I switch jobs, some of this, you know, just until things settle a little bit in my life. So there's always more, right? You know, I could always want more. I feel like I have everything I've ever asked God for, or if I don't have it right now, I know I could do it if I really wanted, or it's on the horizon, you know? It's not far away. It's not unreachable. And so, you know, I'm thankful for God. When I start my prayers, the thing I always say when I pray to God is, thank you for everything you've given me. And it's not, you know, and I always even clarify with God, it's not just that all the stuff you give me, all that you've done for me, the care that you've had for me, and I thank Him for it. But there was a time in my life, you know, I didn't have a lot. I'm 26 now, I'm bigwig airline captain, you know, major airline, make a lot of money, have a good job. You know, I got through college, I have a house, I have the girl, I have everything that I could want, right? You know, there's not a whole lot off my list. Yeah, I'd love to go buy a really nice truck. I'd love to go buy a nice house with land and all this. And it's not unreachable, but it's not right now. You know, it's not a right now thing for me. And that's okay, because I know I just have to be patient, and you know, it'll come. Make right decisions, be smart, be good, and I won't have to worry too much about that. But for everyone, it's not always that way, right? So to get back to it, that's just telling you where I am right now. But when I was 16 in high school, you know, I was driving to school with my sister in her car that wasn't really all that nice, but it was still, you know, good enough. It was just an old beat up Mustang, kind of worked. She, well, you know, it was miserable. I relied on other people. I never really thought I'd maybe even get a car. So my parents weren't rich, but they weren't poor. And, you know, I had everything I kind of needed, but I didn't have a ton that I really wanted, if that made sense. And, you know, I didn't have a car, didn't have a motorcycle, had to save up all my own money to buy my first motorcycle, working at a Subway job. I hated working at Subway. You know, in school, I wasn't the smartest. I would always watch these other kids that say, oh, I didn't study for this test or whatever, and they go take this test, and they get like 100%, and I like studied like crazy. I went in for lunch every day to study like math with my teacher every day, and I would maybe, if I was really lucky, get a B with, I mean, just unimaginable amounts of work. And most of the times it was like C's, D's, you know, a lot of times not even passing it. But I got through school, and you know, I did good in the long run. But the big thing I'm just trying to talk about here is that at every point in my life, I had somewhere that, you know, I was always, you know, I was never the top of the game. Even at the airlines, still not really top of the game. I'm a captain at flying 737s, but I'm not all the way where I want to be in my career, and I'm not, you know, not living where I want to live for the rest of my life. I don't have a house. I don't have you know, it's all these things that I want. But when I sometimes slow down and I just think, you know, I can just count my blessings, and I have so much. You know, God has been so good to me that I was so dumb when I was a little kid. I was so stupid. I was such a problem child, you know. I don't even know how I got here. You know, by the grace of God am I even here where I am right now with a job, you know, not in jail or something or dead. I'm doing crazy things. And it's like, wow, you know, I've gone really, really far. Farther than I genuinely thought I'd ever get in my life. I never thought I'd get this far. I never thought I would have the opportunities and get to see the world like I have, you know, traveling everywhere and stuff. I just never even thought of it as an option. It all happened, right? But, you know, sometimes I still look and I still think, oh, there's more, right? And for me, I've gotten fairly content with where I am. Sometimes it sucks, you know. I drive an old car with 200,000 miles on it, old Mustang I bought for $2,000, fixed up. I put 160,000 miles on it. I do all the work on it myself. I do all this, and it sucks, you know. I get sick sometimes of, you know, driving such a crappy car, but I know I'm saving money for a house. I could buy a nice car and pay for it all in cash, you know, if I really wanted, but I'm trying to be responsible and make the right decision, not accumulate debt. You know, the airlines aren't always the most reliable industry. Another 9/11 could happen. I could lose my job, all these things. And so, you know, for you or for whoever, maybe, you know, you're thinking, oh, this guy, he's nuts, you know, but I'm trying to make and live the smart and the right way. And by doing so, sometimes I feel like I'm always, you know, one step behind my friends or other people or this or that. And it, you know, maybe you're just like that for you, and you always look at everyone else and you feel like you just, it's like it just sucks. You got dealt the worst set of cards, and honestly, maybe you did. You really might have. But the point is to be happy with where you are. If you're awake and alive, if you even know you're existing, then you're probably having a better day than someone out there. You know, you could be in hell. Life, you could be dead. I mean, all these horrible things. That could be you. You could just die. You could die tomorrow in a car accident, and then, you know, you end up in hell and you say, man, my life sucked, but it was sure better than this. You know, I don't know. Take it for what it is, but just don't compare others to yourself. You pray to God, you know, put in the hard work. So many people say, oh, I want money, but they don't want to work hard. They don't want to study in school. They want to go get a job that's super easy, that pays them to do nothing, and then not do it very good, and not really try, not take initiative, you know, show up 5 minutes late every day or whatever, and then they wonder why, you know, they're not really excelling in life. And I was a flight instructor. I taught people how to fly for a long time. And all these people, you know, everyone wants to be an airline pilot, and everyone wants to be an airline captain and all this stuff. But the problem is so many people aren't willing to put in the work that it takes. You know, be an airline pilot, it's not impossible. I genuinely believe the large majority of people can do it, but it's the people who are willing to put in the amount of work are going to do it. If some guy doesn't really care about being an airline pilot and he just finds out they make a lot of money and they get to travel and the job's kind of fun, and he goes and does it, but he's willing to put in all the effort for the other things, he might go and, you know, accomplish something that someone who really, really has always wanted this their whole life just can't do because they're being lazy. I mean, they just want it so bad, but they're not willing to work for it. You know, you have to want it and work for it. You have to put in the work to reap the reward. And so many people won't do it. And you might say, you know, I'm 16, my parents don't have a lot of money, I drive a stupid little really junky car and this and that, and it's embarrassing, and I don't have any girls that like me, I don't know if I'm gonna have money to go to college and all this. I mean, there's so many opportunities. I was in high school and I worked at Subway so hard that I was able to save up and buy a CBR 600 motorcycle, and I rode it all around, and I fixed it up, and I could never afford a race car. You know, at first I always loved race cars. I always loved motorcycles, but I don't know why I never thought of them being as like something that I want to modify and fix up and go race, you know, drag race and all. I was never into it, but I always like racing cars, drag racing, speed, all this stuff. I always wanted a car, you know, I could fix up and modify and work on, that had a big V8 engine in it and a manual transmission, a 6-speed in it, you know, and something that was cool enough and in good enough shape that it was, you know, I wasn't making a poor decision, you know, even putting money into it at all, because it was just such a junk car that it would never even be a chance. And you know, I was disappointed. So I looked at other avenues, and I realized, man, I love riding motorcycles. It's like my favorite thing ever. I'll just get a fast motorcycle and then I can go do all the same stuff. So I did. And yeah, I didn't have a cool car, I didn't do whatever, but I still got to go to all the car meets, and I had the coolest motorcycle, and I got to work on it, and I got good at riding it, and I got to go have all the fun on it in a different, you know, sect of the on-road, you know, whatever, go fast club. And it was a great time. And I don't, you know, I made a lot of poor decisions I shouldn't have on it, going crazy, doing wheelies, all this stuff, going to things that a 16-year-old, you know, had no business being at, and all this whatever else. But you know, you can make things happen. You sit around and envy. And some point, you know, you're never probably going to be a trillionaire. You're never going to have so much money that you just don't know what to even do with it. And if you do, then it's like some people just blow it away unbelievably fast and whatever else. It's just, I mean, look at lottery winners. These are people that probably said, oh, I'll write $1 million, this or that, and then they have $1 million and they blow it in a month. And you're like, how is that even possible? I don't know. You know, I don't know either, but all I'm saying is the grass is always, an airline pilot saying, we have, I will give you right here. And I get sick of hearing people say it. It's the grass is always greener on the other side. And sometimes with an educated decision for you, it really might be. And that's totally fine. Like when I came to my current airline, I was at a regional and flying CRJ7s and 900s. And I was based in New York and Detroit, and I hated it. I hated that airline. I mean, it was terrible. I did not enjoy working there. I didn't enjoy the people. I didn't enjoy commuting, any of that stuff. So I quit. I didn't quit. I went and got another job and then left. I did quit, I guess, and then left for a different job. And I thought, man, I'll try this out, see if I like this better. Flying 737s, going better places. I'm going to move so I don't have to drive to work. After year one, you know, I'll make a lot more money. And it's a stable airline that does, you know, cooler things. I get to fly cargo planes and charters, and I've flown into Guantanamo Bay and all these crazy places doing military stuff, whatever with them. And it's awesome, and I love my job, and it's so fun. But, you know, I had to go suffer for a little bit to get where I wanted. You have to put in the work. It's not always, you know, some of it is, yeah, it's just unattainable. It takes luck. It's pure luck, you know, to get as rich as some people do, whatever. You might work really hard, and you might never get there. But I promise you'll get a lot farther than the guy that never tried, right? I mean, just take it for what it is. It's so easy to compare yourself to everyone else. Comparison's a thief of joy. That's what they say. And the grass is always greener. And it's, all those things are true. It always looks better from the other side. It always is, you know, if you, whatever, this or that. If you're an FO, you just want to be the captain so you don't have to fly with these annoying old guys anymore that do stupid stuff, that land there bad all the time. And then you go upgrade, but then, oh, now I'm the captain, and I have 10 tons of responsibilities. I'm stressed all the time. You know, it's a lot of work. It's like you sit there and judge people, and then you sit in their seat and you realize, man, it was so nice having these old boomer guys that they made this job seem so easy that I thought I could do it. And now that I'm over here, I'm doing nowhere near as good as they are. And they looked like they were half asleep, half awake, you know, doing it. And suddenly you appreciate it. You're like, wow. And I can't believe it. You know, you stand, as military people say, you stand on the shoulders of giants to get where you are. You know, people that are so much better than you and where you are, you start to take advice. You know, I'm in a ground class today learning, and this captain, I've flown with him before, and he's not the most fun captain to fly with by any means, and whatever else. And when you fly with him, he's so smart, it's almost annoying and all this. But then you sit there and listen to him, and you're just like, I wish I could understand all this as good as you did, because I'd be so much of a better pilot. My life would be so much easier. And then you look at it and you say, oh, he probably just, you know, worked really hard to get here, and I can do the same thing if I'm willing to put in the work, which is true. And so many people just aren't ever willing to put in the work. They're not willing to go the extra mile, per se. And then they wonder, you know, why am I not getting here, or why do I suck, this or that? It's because you're not putting in the work that you saw these other people who did good to get there. Now I'll switch off that, you know, you put in the work and you'll reap the reward. But you can go to the other side, and side, it may not always be perfect. Sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes you try your absolute best. You know, I've tried things before, the absolute hardest I can, wholeheartedly. You know, seriously, I really put in effort, and I have just failed. I didn't get through, or like I didn't pass a test or whatever. You know, it happens. Sometimes you can, you know, my stress way of this is saying that you can control what you can control, and you just gotta roll with whatever else happens that's out of your control, you know. And I take that too far, that I try to control too much of what I control sometimes, and I try to overdo it, and I try to over prepare, and sometimes that's even detrimental. I don't know. But the thing is sometimes stuff just happens. And like a motorcycle, you know, you just shift gears. You just click into the next one and you start rolling a different way. It's like you're a bullet going through the woods, and you hit one tree, and then you kind of bounce off and you start going a different direction, then you bounce off another one and you start going a different direction, until eventually you kind of stop and you plant in one, and that's where you are. You know, you grow your roots, or you settle in, and then one day you shoot off in another direction or something. I don't know. But thing is things happen. You can't always prepare for everything. Maybe you always wanted to be a pilot and it just didn't work out, and you tried your hardest, you studied everything, but you just were bad at flying the airplane. That happens to people. You know, I've had guys like that. I even had one guy who's great at everything. He was like one of my best students ever, and he just decided, you know, this isn't for me. I was like, you are so gifted at this. You know, so many of my other students would have given anything, you know, to be as gifted as that guy was, and he just literally one day, you know, not to say he took it for granted or whatever, he did what he needed to, but he switched and he just said, yeah, aviation's not for me. And he did it right before he took like his final check ride, and I was like, dude, you are fantastic. All you have to do is pay $500, get your pilot's license, never touch it again. At least you had it. All this is for nothing now because you didn't do it, and he just let it go and moved on. I don't know, whatever. Maybe you do, that has to be you, but not by choice, because you're deficient and whatever, it didn't work out, or you didn't get that job, you know. I don't know, you tell me. But all I'm just saying is, you kind of look at other people and you never know. I've flown with so many guys that, you know, they kind of suck to fly with as a pilot, and then suddenly you start talking to them, and a few minutes later you find out they kind of hint on something, and you're like, oh, you excited to go back home? And the guy's like, I wish the trip was 4 days longer. And we just flew like the most miserable trip imaginable in human history. And this guy's saying he was excited and happy to be at work. I'm like, dude, why do you not want to go home? And he's like, oh, you know, the old lady and me are having issues, or this or that, or my dog just died and I just don't want to be around the house. You know, who knows? But the thing is that bad things happen. You don't always know what other people, the guy might get in his Ferrari and drive home to a sad, miserable life, and you're sitting there in your junky car driving home to your amazing life, and suddenly it doesn't make sense. You know, you're like, what if you just, all right, we're gonna be absolute gooners here, I'm doing it. But sometimes things happen and you just don't understand them, or you don't know what's going on in people's home life, and then you might think they're bad people or annoying or whatever, and then it comes to find out, you're like, oh, I get it now. But now I just feel bad for you. I don't dislike you anymore. Yeah, you made life a little annoying, but I just found out, like, you have this going on. Or maybe some guy's super rich, but then you found out he got all his money from his dad who died, and he would have given all the money away for free. You know, he didn't even want the money. He just wants his dad because he misses him, you know. Who knows? You know, just be sympathetic. You don't know everyone's situation. You don't know everyone's home life, and that is something that's really important that I've kind of learned in my life. I've even seen in my own life, where it's like, you know, I don't know what these people's home lives are like. So when you meet these strangers, or, you know, maybe it's you and whatever, and then you judge them, or you envy them, or you want what they have, or you think, oh, this guy's got such a pretty girlfriend, I wish I had a girlfriend. But then you find out, you know, he knows his girlfriend's been cheating on him and all this, but he won't leave because he doesn't want to be lonely, or she's a horrible person, or his life's miserable. But yeah, he has a girlfriend, and you wish that was you, but no, you don't. You know, you don't know that. And you don't know people's situations. Maybe they do have a great life. Maybe they literally have everything squared away and they have a perfect life. They're just a few years ahead of you, and that's going to be you soon. You just gotta wait, you know, you just gotta get there. You gotta wait for your turn, per se, you know. I don't know, but don't compare yourself to other people. Don't think that, you know, you're behind. You're never behind in life. You're always at your own point. You know, there's a lot of people at the airlines that stay co-pilots, is what you probably think, or if you don't understand the airlines, first officers. And you say, why are these old guys with, you know, a ton of experience or whatever, why are they not a captain and some young 26-year-old kid is a captain? You know, you might wonder that, but then it turns out, oh, their wife's a brain surgeon, or maybe they have a medical issue and so they can't become a captain because they can't hold the right medical qualifications. You know, who knows? Things happen. But the point is, it's like, you just, sometimes you look at a situation and you think everyone's got it easier, everyone's got it better than you, and that's just not true. You know, that's not true at all. And don't down yourself out, up and down, you know, don't make your own life miserable because you think everyone else has got it easier than you or lives a better life than you or whatever. You know, it's just not the way it is. You have great opportunities in your life that maybe they don't have, and just be happy with what you got. You know, it can always be worse. Trust me, that's the one thing I always think of. It could always be worse. You know, I could lose everything. You know, I could lose the little I have. You know, maybe you have nothing and you're homeless and you're walking around and you trip and you break your leg and now you can't even walk around. You know, it could always be worse. And now you're in a wheelchair and now the bolt falls off the wheel and now you can't even roll around. You're just sitting. And now your umbrella got blown away by the wind. So now you're sitting in the sun. You know, it can always be worse. That's what I'm saying. So just be grateful for what you got. You know, thank God for it every day. And hope, you know, just trust him. God, like he says, who a good father, when their son asks for bread, he's not going to hand him a snake because that's stupid, right? You know, and God says, I'm like the same way. I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to give you bad gifts. You know, I love you and I care about you, and he wants us to live life and, you know, enjoy existence, but worship him and put God first in all your ways. When you're not putting God first in your life, you know, expect calamity, expect chaos, expect bad stuff to happen because you're not being smart, you're making poor decisions. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. That was way longer than anticipated, but you know, it's something we all experience. To a 65-year-old guy who's retired, he says, oh, I wish I had a better job. But, you know, even the rich guy that makes a ton of money, maybe he just wishes he had more free time. You know, everyone wants to be in everyone's situation. It's always, grass is always greener on the other side, and that's what you think. And then you get there, and sometimes it's 10 times worse. So don't lie to yourself. Don't trick yourself. Don't set yourself up for, you know, utter failure, because you never know what's coming or whatever else. Life's pretty good, and just be grateful for it every day. Remember, Jesus cares about you, he loves you, he's not going to give up on you, he's not trying to screw you over. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down there. I try to respond or read them or whatever else, and just let me know, and I try to read them all. So if you want me to make a video or whatever, leave it down there, I'll try to do that too. That'll be it for today, guys. I'll see ya. One more, and I'll head back. Ah, it's such a wimpy. I didn't get very high. What a noob. I'm trying to give you up, so